Did 30 years in the Navy. She graduated from the War College and has a master's degree in national security studies. She was a naval aviator designated in '96, which was early in the women in naval aviation. She's been on the Kitty Hawk, the Carl Vinson, and she was in '99 the HS-6 Pilot of the Year. HS-6 is?
Helicopter Anti-Submarine Squadron 6, part of Carrier Air Wing 11 at the time.
Sweet.
On board the Kitty Hawk and then the Carl Vinson.
And you did that in only like 3 years or so. That's amazing. Good job. Operation Iraqi Freedom, more than 40 combat sorties and 3,200 flight hours total. She took command of the legendary, the legendary Black Knights are, it's a college on the Hudson River. And so I don't know what she means by the legendary Black Knights, but in October in 2011, in 2006, she was assigned as Vice President and Chief of Staff of the U.S. Naval War College in Rhode Island, and the Force Requirement Director in 2019. She's been awarded the Legion of Merit, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, 2 Air Medals, Strike/Flight, 4 Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medals, 2 Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medals, that's twice, and various campaign decorations. She's currently Deputy Director of the Commander Naval Air Force's Legacy Office, supporting leader development, talent management, and naval aviation outreach for the global community of over 120,000 personnel. With that, Tamara Graham.
Awesome, thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate the kind introduction there. Probably a lot of boring random stuff about ribbons and those types of things, which anybody who served knows is really about working with phenomenal teams of people that put you in the right place at the right time and meet with success. So I have been blessed for a 30-year career in the Navy, which I had never planned on doing. I had a mercenary mindset of I needed a way to pay for college. And like many people who end up serving, I was a military brat. My dad was Air Force, so just to kind of cover the gambit here. So I saw some hands, there's two Army. How many former Navy people in here? How many former Air Force people in here? How many, I just love aviation, which is why I'm here? Awesome. Well, that's great. That's a great mix of folks. I will say, as he was going through my bio there, Jared commented the last thing was naval aviation outreach is part of the mission that we do, because it's super important to get out and touch all the communities out there to help folks understand what opportunities exist to come serve, to get an education, and to do some pretty amazing things with some amazing folks. The opportunity to chat with you guys today is phenomenal, because you are that touch point, you are the storytellers, and that's what kind of weaves our world together. When you look at, there's a plane, there's a pilot, how does that young kid walking in the door see themselves in that spot? And what are they going to do if they get there? And how is that kind of sense of adventure going to draw them in to do all the things they need to do to be successful in that world? So thank you for what you do as volunteers here, for bringing aviation to life for so many people. I appreciate that. I appreciate that as a mom as well, because I've dragged my daughter through here, and many a person has taken her along and pointed at different stuff, which is always great, because mom doesn't know anything, right? So you gotta have somebody else go through the process. So it's an honor to be here. I'm going to cover a couple different things, and then hopefully we can kind of have a little bit more discussion. You guys can tell me where I'm off, because some of you have been witnesses to some of this history, and then hopefully we can kind of educate each other on the general sense of where things are and what we can share with the community writ large as we go forward. So I'm also, because I'm a naval aviator, going to weave in my own stories, right? Because I can't get in front of a group and not talk about myself. That's how aviators roll, as you guys probably know. So we'll talk a little history. I'll talk a little bit about my personal career, and then a little bit about our mission of outreach, and then hopefully open the floor up for questions, so I can hear what's on your minds and hopefully fill in any of those gaps, and vice versa. All right, if I can get my tech down here. All right, so I like to start with this. This is kind of who naval aviation is. A lot of folks don't recognize that the naval aviation is the largest portion of our United States Navy communities. As you can see on the screen, we have over 120,000 folks. 11 aircraft carriers, currently 9 air wings. We are deployed around the world 24/7, as you probably hear in the news. And this past year, 2024, has been incredibly busy, where we've had at least, at times, literally 7 aircraft carriers and their air wings underway at sea, either in harm's way or preparing to go forth and do our nation's bidding. So a very high level of what we call op-tempo and stress on the fleet, and a lot going on, and a lot of training and a lot of excellence, and that's one of the reasons why we're always looking for more folks to make sure that we can maintain that work. But here's the breakdown as we talk about, we're going to touch on women a little bit, that we're at about 13% of our aviators, so either pilots or naval flight officers are women today. When I came in the service, it was literally a month after they had repealed the combat exclusion law. So we were probably less than 2% at the time. So we've doubled every decade, which is great. That doesn't start, it starts small, but you know, compounding interest, we're gonna get there, and the whole point is to make sure that we're bringing the right talent in the door that can do this job and do great things. So our enlisted force is a far better reflection of what America looks like today. So a little higher numbers there, and those are other areas where we're constantly looking for our promising young talent on technical skills that can go forth and do good work. So that's just general Navy stuff for the non-Navy folks in the room, so that you can fly Navy when you're out on the floors of the museum here, even if that wasn't where you come from. All right, so here's just back history. You guys might already know this. I'm sure this is part of the process here. So we have Bessie Coleman, who I love to tell her tale as like daughter of sharecroppers, one of 13 kids, was literally in France flying before Amelia Earhart started her first flight lesson. Not somebody you hear stories about, but what an inspirational individual. And I think that's just a great way, again, connecting those stories of those real people out there who are not interested in hearing no and pushing their way forward to fight for their passions and doing some awesome stuff. And then obviously we got Amelia Earhart. Again, we're talking like early 1920s to 1921 or so. And then in the bottom, the WAVES, or I'm sorry, the WASPS, so the Women Air Service Pilots. So that is a big part of our tradition as military aviators. Looking back in World War II, when we were short on people, we had to get aircraft from point A to point B, and Jackie Cochran, who holds many an air race record, pretty impressive during the time, convinced the Air Force, or I should say the Army at the time, Army Air Corps, that training some women to go do this would be useful for the service. And so it turned into about, I think we had 1,700 women air service pilots overall for about a 3 to 4 year period. Literally millions of miles of flying. Flew everything in the military inventory, cross countries, they towed banners, got shot at, all those fun things. Got to do some pretty incredible work, and to hear their tales, and I'm sure you guys have some of that here at the museum, it's really impressive, the great work they did. And then I will also say the kind of continuity of what it means to be an aviator. I remember listening to one of the interviews, and they were joking about how they were smuggling alcohol into the barracks in their Kotex boxes, and I'm just like, that is what naval aviation is all about, right? Like, how do we have fun? How do we work hard and play hard? And how do we make this stuff happen? So I just brought a tear to my eye hearing those stories and recognizing kind of the connection that we have with our past. So that was up to World War II. And then this is more recently. So in 1973, Admiral Zumwalt was the CNO, youngest CNO ever. The Vietnam War was ending. We were moving to an all-voluntary force. And as many of you probably personally experienced, it was not a good time to be in the military. It was not looked on very well. And so Zumwalt was like, how do we change the dynamic? How do we start bringing in more folks, keep this a volunteer force, and meet the needs of our nation's security with the folks that are out there in America today? So he put out Z-Note 116, which basically said we're going to now open up service to women. It was limited in scope. You couldn't be on a combat vessel, you couldn't fly a combat aircraft, but it did include going through flight school. So our first 6 women in 1973 started flight school. There were actually 8 of them total. 4 were pulled off the streets from various universities that were interested in applying. 4 were already in service, doing other things. Typically that was within either health or communications or administration, were the limited spots that women could serve at that time. So of the folks you see on here, you've got Barbara Allen, Jane O'Shea, Skiles was her maiden name, Judy Newfer right here, who ended up being a NASA 06 and flew hurricane hunters into the heart of hurricanes in addition to her work with NASA, so amazing double career. And then we've got Anna Marie Scott. And then down here, Joellen Oslin, Drag was her maiden name, and then probably one of our most famous, Rosemary Mariner, first jet qualified female aviator, first female squadron CO, and a number of friends of mine were actually able to execute this. Unfortunately, she passed away due to cancer, and to honor her, they had a no man missing man flyover of her funeral with 4 F-18s, all crewed by female aviators to honor her service. So they started in a world where nobody expected them to make it, and they all were amazing folks to begin with, and they pushed and they were incredibly successful. Many stayed in either the reserves or active duty and served and retired as captains. And then one of the other aspects, so 20 years from when these ladies literally were allowed to start flight school is when I graduated from the University of Virginia with a commission, and I had no idea these women existed. And I had no idea there was any kind of history that would have limited my ability to go do whatever I want to do in naval aviation. So it's one of the reasons we talk about it a little bit, because to tell those stories and understand kind of the work that went into getting us the opportunities that we have and to ensuring, obviously, we hit all the values that our nation holds dear. So after a fair amount of service and a lot of restrictions to include, I think this was Anne Marie Scott, Fuqua was her married name. She was actually instructing in H-3 helicopters, and they had to go out to one of the small ships, and women weren't allowed on ships. So she's like, well, I'm still going to teach you how to land on one. So she made her co-pilot do all the calls. So the CO of the boat never knew there was a woman out there. So they knocked out their landings and came back. Those were the types of things these women had to deal with, and they made it work, you know. But then you roll into times like all the aspects of the Gulf War, the kind of ubiquity of where people could be, whether they're on a support side of a mission or full combat mission, that was very much blurred. And there were women out there flying tankers, doing all sorts of different things, because by then the Air Force had also integrated as well as the Army. So it kind of became obvious that women were in combat, women were flying combat, and they were excelling just like their male counterparts. And so the question was, why do we have these limitations that keep these folks from being able to move further and do good things on behalf of the service? So they worked really hard to try and get in front of Congress and to get in front of leadership and say, this needs to change. So in 1993, they succeeded in that. They called it the revolt. They literally organized across all the female military aviators. They took leave so they wouldn't be violating any policies. And then they put on, for the Navy, they put on their whites, because that was an appropriate uniform to be in. And then they went to the Hill. And they said, we've been doing this, we've been flying these aircraft, we've been teaching people to fly, we've been executing all these missions, we should be allowed to have complete and full service. And there was obviously some challenges in doing that, but leadership said yes. So the law and the policy changed, and then over time the mindset and attitudes have changed as well. And that has only been through kind of the hard work that these ladies put in, and then the continued interest and effort that has come since then in going forward and executing our mission sets effectively. So again, it wasn't until I was probably like 20 years in naval aviation that I started to recognize who these folks were. I was blessed enough to probably meet 4 of them over the course of my career, but I really didn't appreciate who they were, what they had done, until I started actually reading a little bit more about history and understanding my own history, which is again one of the great reasons that you guys are doing some awesome work here at the museum to bring that to life. So then we have the today. So you'll probably recognize some of these faces. These are the young women who actually did the flyover of Rosemary Mariner's funeral. This is CAG Joiner, our first female CAG, and she's now a 3-star admiral working on the joint staff. You probably recognize Tammy Jo Schultz. That was a very famous picture that came out when she became well known for saving the Southwest aircraft she was captaining when it lost an engine and punctured the aircraft, and unfortunately they lost a life, but brought it in safely from there. Rosemary Mayer is in the top. Robin Braun, who was the lead for our Naval Reserve Forces, first woman to do so, and also a Navy pilot for E6s. And then Sunny Williams is in the corner. I got to highlight her. Navy helicopter pilot for my Gila Bub is in the room. Also multiple astronaut trips up to the space station, multiple moonwalks, and she was the lucky winner of the "you're going up to the space station for 1 week and 9 months later your bus has arrived." So so the SpaceX
she'll be back Tuesday.
Yeah, but SpaceX is up there now. They're docking, they're doing their turnover, and I was actually on my way here listening to an interview with another astronaut, and the interviewer was like, you know, God, they must be bored up there, and the astronaut's like, I don't know a single astronaut who's ever felt like they were bored in space. Like, there is just way too much going on. So the enthusiasm of even being up there for 9 months, it'll be exciting to hear what comes back. And I'm blessed enough. I mentor a young woman who is now one of the in the top 120 remaining for the next NASA class. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed on her behalf. Test pilot, F-18 pilot for the United States Navy, and an ultimate rock star. So I'm hoping her name makes the list, and I can cheer her on for the next shots up to the space station. But so lots of great stuff. This is kind of a litany of all different firsts, and I highlight this because in today's world, I kind of get frustrated when I hear firsts, because so many people have been quietly achieving over the course of the last 30, 35 years, that we've really kind of been everywhere and done most things. And I will jokingly say, like, I don't want to hear you were the first in the 3rd phase of the moon to drop a bomb in this section of the world. Like, you know what? We've been knocking these things out as a team, and that's the important part, as a Navy warfighting team for a really long time, and it's pretty awesome to see where people have risen to given their dedication, their skills, and their mission effectiveness. So this is just a big rundown of the various folks. Again, we've got Blue Angels, we got astronauts, we've got senior enlisted who have run the full scope of the Navy, and I've been lucky enough to serve with a lot of them. So that's been pretty cool. When I look at this and I'm like, oh, April Beldo here, she was the first class petty officer of my first squadron, and I'm like, man, now you're the fleet master chief. Like, that's pretty, and a rock star, by the way. Like, people love her, and she's an awesome person. But you're just kind of like, I remember when we were both kind of, I was a JG and you were a first class, and yeah, it's kind of funny how time goes by and the things you get to do. All right, so gratuitous helicopter shots, because this is the cool stuff, right? Well done. So this is what I flew in the Navy, and a number of the mission sets that we perform in my community. Carrier-based H-60 helicopters. During most of my time, I flew the Hotel and the Foxtrot variant. One was anti-surface warfare and supported Special Operations Forces, which is this H model. The F actually hunted down submarines, so our job was to protect the aircraft carrier from the submarine threat. Also, any day in the Navy is a random adventure. I was the XO of the squadron. This is actually me flying right there. We were off the coast on the USS Ronald Reagan doing workups, and I got a call from my duty officer, and he's like, it's like 5:45 in the morning. He's like, ma'am, you know, you're on the alert today, and you need to go do this rescue mission with a Carnival cruise ship. And I'm like, what stupid scenario did someone dream up that we're planning a Carnival cruise ship rescue? This is ridiculous. So I'm thinking this is a scenario. He goes, no ma'am, this is real. I'm like, what? So I throw my flight suit, run to the ready room, and lo and behold, we are way south. The Carnival cruise ship Splendor had a fire at sea, and they were dead in the water, and they needed support, so the Reagan had zipped down there, and so we got a chance to actually bring them some food, water, and otherwise, and coming into the aft end of the ship on the running track, and I was sitting left seat, my lieutenant was sitting right seat, and I was joking, I would probably never say this again. As you come in for the hover, I go, just keep the aircraft between the Skull in the mini golf and the spiral slide, and you'll be right on. And I'm like, probably will never say that again as a military aviator, but it was just one of those days where you're like, you never know what you're going to get in this career, and you get to do some pretty cool things. All right, so here's a few more shots of me. This is a quick round robin of my career. As I said, started in HS6. That grainy black and white picture is standing alert during Operation Southern Watch in Kuwait. My boss, who was a former DC SWAT cop turned Navy pilot, was like ready to go all the time, and had 3 daughters. So as we were standing alert, he's like, I need to take a picture and send it to your mom. So I like jocked up with everything, and he was like, no, put the visor down. Like, we gotta get this, it's gotta look good. So this is the shot that went to my mom as I'm like, got my M16, my 9mm, we got the, the 240 in the back, and that sat on her desk at the bank that she worked at. And I'm pretty sure she was completely worried and freaked out the entire time, but also proud that this is her daughter out doing some crazy stuff. So that was a great experience. This is my crew. That's my crazy boss right there who took the photo in question, as we're in Camp Doha, Kuwait at the time, and that was back in the late 90s. Fast forward, I was an instructor pilot, and then I did what we call our department head tour with HS-8, part of Carrier Air Wing 9, on board the Carl Vinson and then the Stennis. And at that point, we got to forward deploy in Iraq in 2005. So we were up in Basra, so the southeast section, working both with the SEALs and then with our British counterparts, which was pretty incredible, doing intel and reconnaissance, and then SEAL support to help them with some of the mission sets we were doing there. So another great experience as a department head, getting a chance to lead dual mission flights in combat. It was really amazing. Those are those moments where I'm a Navy pilot, I'm flying 50 feet over land, in a combat environment, doing the mission we trained for, and you're like, I'm glad I stuck around, because I was going to get out until 9/11, and then I'm like, well, I can't get out now, so I'll do one more tour. And one more tour turns into one more tour, turns into one more tour, and before you know it, you're old and they're kicking you out. So, and then last, I'd like to highlight, there's like I said, every day is a different day for mission sets. When I was the squadron XO of the legendary Black Knights of HS4, deployed on the Ronald Reagan, we were fortunate enough to be in a position to support when the 2011 tsunami hit Japan. So the island of Honshu was devastated by that tsunami, and if you will remember, it also took out the Daiichi Fukushima nuclear plant. So it was a very interesting time of flying through nuclear plumes while trying to deliver aid to the folks of Japan. And I will tell you, it is the most rewarding thing I have ever done professionally. I'm a mom. My daughter was 2 when I deployed as an XO on that cruise, and I often tell people, like, it's hard where you think I'm away from my family, I know she needs me, I'm doing this job, and you start to balance it, and then you have these moments where you're sitting in a landing zone. These people have lost everything. There's literally homes floating by the aircraft carrier. You see trains on ridge lines, and you land in an athletic field that's halfway up a mountainside, and a group of people come out, and you can see these little faces as they're, like, our crewmen are handing them candy from the ship's door, and we're unloading food and water and blankets because it's snowing and below 30 degrees. And I thought, you know what, my daughter's safe at home with a dad who loves her and a roof over her head, and because of what I do, I'm here to help kids her age who've lost everything. And those are moments not everybody gets, but I feel very blessed to have had that, to recognize the value of the service that we get to do in defense of our nation and the work that we do around the globe. So that was a great experience. I also highlight, because many people start to think, oh, the military isn't what it used to be, like the kids these days, blah, 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 right? Everybody has their standard stories along those lines. They were literally locked down the aircraft carrier. So what we call our line guys, who run the flight deck, they make sure aircraft are ready to go, fueled, cleaned up, loaded up, everything's been checked, and they launch us, they land us, they coordinate everything with the flight deck. They couldn't come in the ship because it was sealed due to the radioactive concerns of the nuclear plant that was having its challenges. So those kids were up on that deck for like 18 to 20 hours a day. They would sneak food up through one little portal. Every MAF or maintenance action form had to be done through like a really small kind of hole to like keep everybody inside the ship safe. Well, they were out there not knowing what they were being exposed to, but knowing what they were doing was helping save lives that day and that next day. It was eye-watering to think this is what 18 and 19-year-old kids are willing to do. Running to and from the front end of the flight deck to the aft end of the flight deck. We were supporting aircraft from literally all over our strike group as well as shore-based out of Japan. So they were like literally hundreds of hits a day, loading these aircraft up, launching them off, bringing them back, fueling them up, starting all over again. Amazing. You have amazing sailors that are doing work today. The other story I like to tell is that as our ready room was very much the direct contact with the folks that were in Honshu, sailors would come to our ready room with their coats from like their racks and saying, we're not going ashore, so please give this to somebody who needs it. Here, they go to the ship store, Santa Barbara Navy League, because it was the Ronald Reagan, had funded that pretty well, so there were all these little TY bears. They bought all the stuffed animals out, they bought all the candy out, and they would bring it to our ready room and say, please give these to the kids. These are your sailors. These are your young American kids who are doing awesome work, and it was eye-watering when you'd land in the middle of a random landing zone and see somebody wearing a ship's coat from somewhere in the strike group because some young sailor said someone needs this more than I do. Awesome, awesome. Like I said, it was a great experience, and I feel very blessed to have been part of that team. All right, so mission next, as I said, part of our world is to try and get out there. Over 80% of the people who come do this job come from families that did it. My dad was an Air Force navigator. Most people come from like the legacy of military service. The 6 women I highlighted in the beginning, most of them were military, had a family member in military service, if not their dad directly in naval aviation. So as we are smaller and smaller as a service and a percentage of our great nation, there's a lot of people who don't even know this is an opportunity or have no idea what it means to serve. And so part of what we like to do is get out and go talk with kids who might not have that legacy of service in their background and might not understand who gets to go do this stuff. So demystifying who wears the adult onesie to work every day. It's not Tom Cruise. It's an array of people, and being able to talk to those kids and inspire them is super important. And I know, as we talked about, that's like one of the roles that you guys have here as docents to drive that home. And you never know when you have just that one conversation that plants that seed that comes later in life. Because every single person I've chatted with, when I go around like, hey, somebody checks in like, what made you decide to join the Navy and go into aviation? And it was like, I saw the Blue Angels when I was 5. I talked with my uncle who did this. I had a mentor who kept me on track. My scout leader, my this, my that. So those are the really critical conversations, and they can't be underestimated on the impacts that you have with young folks to make good decisions moving forward, to be able to get to go do great stuff. All right, here's, again, gratuitous naval aviation shot. We've even got our tilt rotor in the middle, our E2. Naval aviation covers a broad spectrum from land-based, no-kidding, big-wing stuff that is communicating with the National Command Authority to let our submarines know whether they should be launching missiles or not, to bringing stuff from ashore out to the carrier to make sure we've got the pieces and parts and even the ice cream that we need to keep the world moving. So a really great opportunity to get to do any number of things. F-35's in the lower corner there. This is our P-8 growlers and prowlers, growlers and Hornets, and then of course the best are the helicopters in the middle. They make everything happen. So. All right, that's an older picture of my daughter, but what questions might you have? What thoughts do you have? Love to open the floor to conversation. Please.
I'd like to see a military woman run for President of the United States. And
you and my mom. You and my mom are on board with that.
I think that is one of the best things we can do. I really believe that.
Well, I will tell you, I am lucky enough to know, and regardless of your politics, a number of friends of mine who have served that are actually in Congress. And one of my good friends is, she's the congresswoman for the Virginia Beach area. And she started as a Navy helicopter pilot. Her husband is a Navy F-18 pilot. she got out, went to nursing school, became a geriatric specialist nurse, had 4 kids, so she's a Navy mom. Her oldest is in flight school now. And then at one point in time said, I am tired of sitting on my couch yelling at my TV. It's time to get off the couch. And that was her ad campaign. So she had the complete gambit of having served, having been the spouse of a service member, having kids in service, and then understanding obviously big community stuff. So she decided to throw her hat in the ring, and she's in her second, she was just reelected this past election in Virginia Beach, which is a huge Navy town as well. And I have another friend of mine who was a JO when I was a commander, who went from being a test pilot, getting out of the Navy and getting into healthcare, and is now throwing her hat in the ring for a Congress seat in New Jersey. So I think there are a lot of folks who recognize that having background in service and understanding some of these other dynamics across our nation through industry is a great background to have to get in there and start kind of going, you know, I think we can, I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth here. I think we can do better, right? We can do better, and we need to get those voices in the right place to be representing a good path forward for our nation. So,
speaking of doing better, unless I missed something, when do you envision the next air pack, air lamp, you know, female?
like when will we have a female air boss?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of a random path to get there. We've had, so for those who are not familiar with the term, I work for who we call the Air Boss. He's the 3-star in charge of man, train, and equip for all of naval aviation. So we're responsible for all the squadrons, the infrastructure, which was my last active duty job, was doing all the requirements for that, and the aircraft carriers. Making sure that we are force providers to our fleet commanders so they have what they need. I will say in naval aviation, as was noted at the beginning of this presentation, the strike fighter world tends to hold a fair amount of sway, and so typically that is where our air boss comes from, is that community. We have a number of female aviators that are in the 05, 06 level right now. We've had our second female CAG, who's also a UVA grad, so we're always proud to wahoo out there. She's on the Truman right now. Leslie Mintz, call sign Meat, is out doing their good work. So I don't know the answer to that. We've had our first female carrier CO, Amy Bauerschmidt, B12 is her call sign, who's a friend of mine. She's about a year behind me in flight school. Hilo Bubba as well. So there are kind of standard paths to get to that particular position. But the fact is there are so many influential positions in naval leadership beyond a man, train, and equip world, and being an operator is a big thing. So our former CNO, Lisa Franchetti, had been the commander of 6th Fleet, dual-hatted as the NATO deputy out there. So there's just a lot of different opportunities and a lot of good places to be doing things. And we have a fair number of folks around the world. And I'm always amazed. We have what we call a joint tour. So you leave your Navy world and you go play in the broader picture. And I was with the Special Operations Forces out of Pacific, and so I got to do theater security engagement. So I'm a 04 Navy helicopter pilot with my brand new master's degree out of the War College, and I find myself sitting in Indonesia having conversations with generals from the Indonesian Navy about their Special Forces Kopassus organization and how we can partner together. And I'm looking around going, oh, how did I get here? Like, oh my God, this is crazy. And you start to realize all the places that military members are out doing things that maybe are not what you see in the movies, and that we have a lot of engagements with embassies in various places and doing some of those negotiation things. And that was a phenomenal 2 years in Hawaii, where I got to go all over Southeast Asia, even got a chance to go to Vietnam and meet with the Vietnamese delegation there. And as I tell the story, my dad is a Vietnam war vet, and we're sitting at dinner, and there's this gentleman who's a Army, Vietnamese Army 05, so lieutenant colonel, and he is their unexploded ordnance expert. And he's sitting across from me and he was telling stories about, you know, his son getting engaged and all this other stuff, and we're having like a very congenial conversation. And then he made a comment about how he just got called in to the south of the country because they had unearthed a bunch of 500-pound bombs and they had to defuse them. And he's showing me these pictures. And I thought, my God, I'm having dinner with this man in the middle of Hanoi. And those bombs might have come off my dad's B-52. Like, holy cow. And yet here we are, how many decades later, having a conversation as peers and how we can move the ball forward for the greater security. So I feel like there are a ton of different opportunities at various levels to make a really big difference, and that's one of the big things I've learned is that it's really not about rank. It's where you are, being in the right place at the right time, and leaning forward to make those good decisions and hopefully influence things in a good way. So we'll see, we'll see. Sir?
So you mentioned the fact that, you know, eventually the mindset changed. I'd rather call it the prejudice declined. And I'm glad to hear that. Do you see or hear about small thises or that's that there still is some prejudice?
Well,
or has
I think
it really changed?
I personally think it has come a long way. I will say this is one of the aspects of military service in general. We pull people from all over the nation, and to be honest, all over the world. I had sailors from Colombia, from various countries in Africa. Everybody comes to the table with who they were raised as and what those cultural nuances were in their family. So that might bring a lot of things that don't align with honor, courage, and commitment, right? But that's what we ask our sailors to buy off on, to be part of this team. And my personal experience is that you might come here thinking women can't do this, or X, Y, or Z can't do this, or they can't be trusted, or whatnot. But in the Navy, like, all you have is each other, and you're out to sea, and my rack's going to get just as wet as yours if we don't do our work correctly. And it was amazing how quickly biases are pushed aside when people A, get to know each other as three-dimensional human beings, and B, realize, I don't care what my prejudices are, if you can fix this engine faster than anyone else, you're making my life easier and I want you on my team. And those things are what I think break down those barriers. And when you see that, you get beyond labels and identity stuff. And as I said, I don't care, like, in the broad array of diversity, you guys are Black Knights in my squadron. That's our identity. We are legendary Black Knights, and that's what brings us together. And we want to leverage all the nuances of where you come from and your different perspective and the ideas you have on how to make things better. So I think we will always have challenges in the beginning as people assimilate and figure out how to get along. I think they are less than they used to be because I think the standard across our nation is very different than it was in 1973 about expectations on what women can do. I mean, you look at, you know, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon, which is coming up here shortly, and like they wanted to pull her off the course because they thought, you can't do this. This is like, you'll blow up. Like, what's going to happen? Like, you can't. Like, why? What's the issue that says you can't let somebody try to do something? And she apparently was wearing her brother's shoes that didn't quite fit right, and she's got like. She's like a belt of a rope and literally finished the Boston Marathon. And it was because there were people around her that was like, oh my God, there's a woman trying to do this. And by the way, she's kicking my butt. Like, I can't let her beat me. And then when people would try and take her off the course, there were a bunch of guys that ended up saying, no, let her run. So it's those, we've moved so far, and I don't know that, happily, my daughter's generation, I don't think they even know that's how it used to be. And so, which is, I think, a really good thing. And where are we going to be 20 years from now? Hopefully good. I worry because I feel like we're losing the ability to talk to each other and recognize each other's humanity, which is, I think, one of the most important things that we can drive home when we get out, talk to people, meet people, as I said, become three-dimensional human beings to each other, and then life gets a little bit easier. So it's not perfect by any stretch, but I think it's a lot better than it was, that's for sure. Sir?
Yeah, did you choose helicopters, or was it chosen before you?
Every helo pilot says this, but it's true. I chose helicopters. I literally, as a midshipman, they send you every summer to do training. And during aviation week, I flew in the back of a TA-4 which as one of the JGs I talked with was like, he goes, you don't get in it, you strap it on, it's the best thing ever. And I remember hopping in a flight and I was super excited, and it was not what I thought it would be. It was like the smells, like the pressures, like I was expecting clouds to whiz by my head. They didn't. And then you're just kind of like, I can't tell where I am, or like rolling around the sky. It was cool, but I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And then the next week was Marine Week, and I was behind the 2 pilots in the 53. And we are like cruising over the top of this lake, and we hit the edge of and the treetops, and we're yanking and banking over these treetops, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. So that is what drew me to helicopters, and as stated earlier, the ability to fly backwards, sideways, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So they are fun to fly. Naval aviators get trained to fly fixed wing first. So you go through, I think like 250 fixed wing hours. Before I went into my advanced training for helicopters. So I have the option to fly anything we're unrestricted naval aviators. So as a test pilot, as a helo test pilot, I would go fly F-18s as part of my training. So it's kind of a broad array. But yeah, I always thought helicopters were pretty darn cool. So I was happy to do that. Sir.
What was your favorite flying assignment?
That is a tough one because they're all pretty awesome. Being an instructor was a great assignment because the ability, you learn so much when you have to teach somebody something. And that was something I didn't appreciate until I started. In fact, I remember thinking like, oh, I'm going to go be a flight instructor. I'm like, I don't know how to teach somebody how to fly. Like I don't like, flying came naturally to me. So it wasn't like I struggled through it. And so I'm like, how am I going to help someone else do this? And so in starting to fly with young folks who've never been in that aircraft before, you have to really break down and think about what you do, the things that you put into place to make things work. And that made me a much better aviator. And then the joy in getting the light bulb to come on is something that I will never forget. That was like so rewarding when someone can't figure something out, and then you kind of look at them and you're like, well, move your scan here, think about this, picture these things, or you're definitely looking here and that's causing you problems. And then you highlight that and they fix it, and now they're landing, and the look on their face is like, yeah, I got it, like that was awesome. That's probably the most rewarding stuff. The benefit of being a Navy pilot, especially in a dual seat aircraft, is that you are always teaching. So as soon as you are qualified to do something and now you're in charge, you are always teaching the people with you. So I was also a weapons and tactics instructor, so kind of the kilo version of Top Gun, if you will, our Seahawk school. So I got to teach high-end weapons and tactics employment, and shooting Hellfire missiles and dropping torpedoes and that kind of stuff. So that was as a department head, and then as a CO and XO. It's great to teach from the front. Because you demonstrate your ability as an aircraft commander and how to employ the airframe, and it's a really good example for your JOs. And you see again that glow in their eyes. Those are like, I'm in it because it's a team sport, and that has always been my favorite part of it. Which is why I couldn't quite leave. I kept leaving, and then I was like, no, one more tour. Couldn't imagine leaving these folks. So,
Yeah.
Sir.
I noticed on your bio screen, call sign TILO.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come about that?
There's nothing terribly exciting about my call sign, but I will say this. So my maiden name is Karwoski. It's a good Irish name, right, on St. Patrick's Day. And so I had like people that gave me a car wash. There were like all sorts of random things. And my middle name was Lorraine. And so during the Tammy Faye Baker era, someone called me Tammy Lowe. My first name is Tamara. I've always gone by Tamara. I did not like being called Tammy, and Tammy Lowe was even worse. So in the standard of call signs, if you don't like it, it will probably stick. So I tried really hard to say I'm good, I don't care, you call me what you want, right? And then I eventually earned a different call sign in my first squadron because I might have had a few wandering events that involved alcohol. And so I got the call sign Gypsy. Which we don't tell my mom, so mom's not going to see this. So my call sign was Gypsy, and then I transferred from my first fleet squadron back to be I was the first female RAG instructor, so I was a little bit of a interest item because many of the other guys had never been in squadrons with women before. And so the couple folks that were there that had been in my first fleet squadron called me Tammy Lowe. And so that kind of bopped around, and then a friend of mine checked in, and we'd hit the J-Lo era, and that got shortened to T-Lo, and then it was over. So in the grand scheme of things, I feel blessed. T-Lo is not a bad call sign to have, given the array of opportunities out there, but that is how I ended up with T-Lo.
Well, because when you were talking about her coming in over the deck at 50 feet, I go, oh, that's how she got it.
Oh, it is funny. I've had a couple of people suggest that. I'm like, maybe I should turn that story around. Like, I'll start owning that one. Yeah. I like coming in low, not too low, but close. Any other thoughts, questions? I think we're over time anyway. So, hey, I want to thank you so much for your time and your patience today, and again for the work that you guys do as volunteers here at the museum. Keep kicking butt, keep driving that enthusiasm and bringing life to the things that are hanging up on the walls and on the ceiling, because it's really your stories and your engagement that bring it all to life. So thank you so much.
Thank you.